like to share my knowledge of abundance mindset. I've created a lot of great relationships in my area with agents who are, who are starting. A lot of them call me up, different brokerages, asking for my advice. I'm always willing to give it up. People say something like, you're giving up too much of your time. I say, yeah, well, that's going to come back tenfold, and it has. I feel that, you plant a seed today, tomorrow it's going to grow, and it's going to come back tenfold. One thing, I actually had a question for people here, is how many of you did something before real estate? Did something before real estate? Before real estate, that wasn't sales related.
Oh, okay. Next up, it's gonna be a funny one because you guys don't know this, but Steve Oliveria, he is 3 years in the business. He's newer to the sales game, but I'm kind of like reverse engineering this whole intro because he also owns a ton of commercial real estate. Don't let him fool you. The nicest guy. You just talk to him. He is the nicest guy I've ever met. And I actually met him when he was FSBO. Imagine that. I called him as a FSBO. Then he turns to become an agent like years later. And we still remain friends to this day. He's going to be doing, his career volume in 3 years, by the way, is $47 million. He speaks 3.5 languages fluently. You guys catch that? No? He was actually on the TRL show on MTV, if you guys remember that. And he actually sits on a board of 2 nonprofits now, where he has raised in the last 6 years about $250,000 to benefit his community and also beyond from there. Steve Oliveria.
Wow, thanks so much. Wow, I don't know how to appreciate that, buddy. So first of all, I'm just mind blown by like all the amazing information all these agents have provided. Each and one of you that spoke before me says something resonated to me. Even Stacy, just before some of the stuff you talked about, kind of resonated with why I got into real estate. As Dean said, we met many years ago. I decided to put a property up for sale. He reached out to me, and I just really hit it off with him. And it's funny, we've now been friends since. Anytime I have anybody I know looking for real estate in Hudson County, I live down in the suburbs, I call him. If he has anybody he needs, he calls me. So we're constantly, exchanging information. It's a different market, so I don't like to do a disservice to my clients. If I don't know the area, I usually refer it out, and who better than my friend Dean here?
So where's your market, Steve?
So I live in Cranford, New Jersey. So my market is primarily Cranford, Westfield. My office is the Coldwell Banker office in Westfield, which is, I guess, in tri-state area or this part of the country is the #1 office for Coldwell Banker. So I primarily service Union County, but I do go to Morris County, Essex County, a little bit of Middlesex. But as time goes on, I've created a lot of great relationships with different agents in different counties, and I just refer it out. It's a powerful tool for using your referral network.
Yeah, absolutely. How'd you get started in the business?
All right, so it's a great question. So one thing I knew when I was younger is my parents were immigrants. My dad worked in warehouse for 42 years. My mother cleaned homes, worked in a factory. And I went off to college and paid my way through on an academic and an athletic scholarship. And I knew that eventually I wanted to own something. I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to basically, when I got to the point where I had children, I wanted to, be able to be that dad that could take my kids to school, because that was something my father couldn't do for me. He had a 4th grade education, came from, very humble beginnings in Portugal. So I always had this thing in my mind, like, I want to do that. When I was in college, I sold life insurance. I got my Series 6. I was running on a scholarship, working in a restaurant, selling insurance. And then I was 19 years old trying to sell my first policy. And someone was like, oh, do you have children? Do you have, do you have a house? No, I couldn't relate to that. So I knew that if I was ever going to sell anything or own a business, I had to relate to that. And I always had a passion for real estate since a younger kid. My parents were tenants. I didn't really like the landlord. And I always said, well, one day I want to own the building and not be that landlord, like be a nicer version of that. So that always was like a fuel in me. So I started investing in real estate in my early 20s. I worked in corporate jobs, investment banking. 2008, I spent 7 years at Barclays Capital during the financial crisis and really learned a lot, made a lot of great relationships. And during that period of time, I took advantage of a lot of great opportunities and bought real estate. So every time I got paid, I put as much as I could into my 401k, and then any extra money I invested into real estate. So I bought rental properties and just kept scaling and scaling.
Yeah, well, you obviously have a sizable commercial business still, right? A real estate investment business.
So I have 4 commercial properties. I'm actually working on another one right now if everything goes good, and then the rest is all multifamily. What happened in the last 2-3 years that when I went from a W-2 job to 1099, harder to get mortgages on 2 families, and I realized, well, I could just scale. I had some commercial property actually with my cousin, my uncle, that we, started getting into, and then I leveraged that to get more. So I have a couple. I really like the mixed-use retail with apartments up top. I have some property with commercial spaces, so office space that I rent to a non-profit, and then I have multifamily 2 to 4 units, and
awesome.
plus my own that I live in.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I would, you guys, pick his brain about any commercial. This guy, he's a wealth of information. I'm sure he's going to be happy to share it. What would you say in the sales business that you've learned so far in the last 3 years is your personal superpower?
So one thing I have a neighbor I was really good friends with before he downside and moved, and one thing he told me was that sales is about telling a story. I've never been a salesperson. I'm a financial guy. I mean, I've worked on mergers, acquisitions, compliance, dealing with the Federal Reserve. Other than like going door to door and selling like stuff when I was in high school to defer my cost of like a band trip or something. So I'm not a salesperson, but I've always been someone that likes to, like, I can relate to, let's say the janitor down the street or the CEO of a company. I could pick something and speak to that person on it and just create a commonality. I think that was your
Superpower.
Superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So relating to people, I think that's my superpower. I have an abundance mindset. I think one thing is a lot of agents that I've seen me come up, like they don't, I don't like to step on anybody's toes. I'm always very cognizant of who I'm working with. I like to share my knowledge. I have an abundance mindset. I've created a lot of great relationships in my area with agents who are starting. A lot of them call me up from different brokerages asking for my advice. I'm always willing to give it up. People say something like, you're giving up too much of your time. I say, yeah, well, that's going to come back tenfold, and it has. I feel that, you plant a seed today, tomorrow it's going to grow, and it's going to come back tenfold. And, one thing, I actually had a question for people here, is how many of you did something before real estate? Did something before real estate? Before real estate, that wasn't sales related. Okay. All right, so I'm sure, like, whatever you did, whatever job you did, like, for myself, there was times that I hated what I was doing. But I knew that I focused on that, did it 100% of my time, and just gave my 100% effort. So, and then when I left a corporate job or whatever, and I went on to the next, I did it in good terms. And one thing is, what you do every day, you're basically on a job interview for the next, relation, or that relationship's going to lead to another relationship and another relationship. And people sometimes are narrow-minded. They're like, I hate this job, I'm just going to leave and burn these bridges. No, I mean, for me, just keeping that mindset's helped me out tremendously in this business, because people can say, oh yeah, Steve Oliveria, like, worked with him, great guy, gave it 100%, some really tough challenges, but he fought through it, he's a team player. So that's something I'd say is also like a superpower, something I leverage in this career.
And didn't you also represent one of your tenants as a buyer recently?
Yeah, I've had a lot of tenants that have actually helped buy homes. They've reached out to me and say, look,
you're a tenant in your properties, though.
Yeah,
is what we're talking about.
I mean, I really push all my tenants. I talk to them. I said, like, look, I love you guys, love having you, but you're making good money. You should think about home ownership. And I coach a lot of them through. I have a lot of them right now that a few of them I'm working with. I have one that actually helped him. He lived in one of my units. I helped him buy a house, actually off market. I got hold of this market. The seller was already, I just didn't want to put it on the market, so I bought him through. We did a FSBO. I just went to their wedding last week, so that was kind of cool. And while I was there, what's funny is another tenant of mine that lived in my units is the boss is her boss. And she rented from me many years ago, but bought before I became an agent. So it was just a small world. But
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And I know it's only been 3 years that you've been in the business officially now, right? Is there any one thing that you've learned that you would tell your day one self again now?
So here's the thing. I went into this business like, thinking it's just a temporary thing. I had some personal things going on with one of my younger sons, and I needed to step away from the corporate world just for my son and for my family. So I didn't really go in at 100%. I didn't build a good CRM. I didn't put the systems in place, and I got busier quicker than I expected. And there was an agent in my office. Is a top agent in my town. We're really good friends with her. And she said to me, get an assistant, get an assistant. Like, she was maybe selling 1 or 2 homes like a year, not much, and she hired an assistant. I didn't do that. I haven't done that. And sometimes I feel like, I need to act quickly because I'm growing. Like, this year I'm having a better year than last year. And I feel like that's something I wish I did sooner. Like, I just really, like, after my first year, I had a great job opportunity to go back to corporate with someone that worked for me. It was an awesome startup. I turned it down, kept going. So now I'm like, all right, this is going well. 3 years in the business, I got to be 100% in. So I've always been like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And the circumstances that led me to real estate was I wanted to help people and I wanted to be around for my children. And that's, and I feel sometimes when you do things for the right reason, it comes back to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, give it up, guys. Steve Oliveria. Awesome.
Thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Before any questions for Steve before we go? No. Okay. All right. We'll pick his brain after this right here. So awesome. Here we go.